most frustrating thing, honestly, when it comes to discussing Gilmore Girls is how often people want to say that Rory Gilmore is the absolute villain of the show. She's the worst character in the show. She's evil incarnate. Everything that she's ever done is wrong and bad and just absolutely terrible. And the reason for this is actually the reason that we dislike a lot of teen girl characters in TV shows. A, because the world hates teenage girls. It's just true. It's fact. Like, the world hates teenage girls. But B, the other reason, and I think the more important reason, sorry, let me take that back. The less important reason, because I think the most important reason would always be the fact that the world would rather blame society crumbling continuously on the fact that teenage girls exist and have interests. And if teenage girls have interest in those things, they obviously must be inherently wrong and bad. Not bad as in bad, like evil. Bad as in badly written, badly formed, badly completed. One Direction must be bad. But then Harry Styles came out with his own soundtrack, and all of a sudden Harry Styles is a really talented artist. Did anyone know that Harry Styles was a really talented artist? It's almost like the teenage girls have been telling us this for years. Twilight comes out, and suddenly, teenage girls are all over it. And it started, I don't think a lot of people really remember this from the 2006 time period, not with the popular teenage girls reading it, but the weird teenage girls reading it. The, not like other teenage girls, the goth girls who were super into vampires already, because My Chemical Romance had a song called Vampire. It might not have been My Chemical Romance, it might have been Fall Out Boy. I don't know, I couldn't listen to that song because they were talking about drinking blood too much and it made me like, bleh. But all the weird girls in my French class who all had the name Alicia, except for one who had the name, some semblance of the name Alicia, except for one who was named Elizabeth, were all goth girls who would like draw scars on their arms every day in school, and I was surrounded by them. Those were who I was sat next to, and every single one of them was super duper into Twilight. And then my mom tried to get me into Twilight, and I know I like seem like I'm veering off course, but this has a point. And then my mom tried to get me into Twilight, and I was like, no, Elizabeth will think I'm copying her. And my mom was like, if you read Harry Potter one more time, I am going to burn all of your books. She didn't actually say that, but it was like implied, because all I would talk about was Harry Potter. And honestly, you can't blame a woman. After like the 7th time that your 12-year-old is reading Harry Potter, maybe you get her a different book. And Emily Austin had just talked about how she finished reading this book and she was super into it on The View. So my mom was like, we were going to the bookstore and we were getting you this book. And I was like, but Elizabeth will think I'm copying her. And my mom's like, it doesn't matter. It will never matter again. You're buying this book. And then we did, and then I never turned back. And then I became a Twilight girly. And then 20 bajillion years later, and when I say 20 bajillion years later, I mean more than half my life. But because I started this series when I was 26, maybe 27, I started writing a series called If Bella Swan Were Like Other Girls, because I am girly now, because I couldn't be girly when I was 12, because, well, I was girly when I was 12, but I couldn't be actively, aggressively girly when I was 12, because otherwise I would have been considered basic, but that was before basic was an actual term. And it really looks like I don't have eyebrows right now, because I didn't draw them in, but I'm just out of my eyebrow pen and I haven't gone to get it yet. Anyways. Twilight was considered inherently bad, and is actually still considered inherently bad, but the adult women who liked Twilight when they were teenagers are now allowed to talk about it more, and people are accepting it. And Robert Pattinson, who was said to be like a terrible actor who couldn't act and was trash, Batman. And Kristen Stewart, who was said to be a terrible actress who couldn't act and was basically a brick wall in human form, won the French version of Oscar, first American actress ever to do it. Because teenage girls actually really know it's good, okay? They do. But society hates them. So it's not until their fathers realize that maybe the thing that their child likes is pretty okay, and start listening to it, like women in the 1960s listening to the Beatles, and then like 10 years later, men started listening to it and like, wow, whoa, the Beatles are good, guys. Did you know the Beatles are a good band? I had no idea that the Beatles were a good band. And now adult men gatekeep the Beatles from like their 10-year-old daughter, who in the 1950s would have been more obsessed with the Beatles than the adult man was. You know? So the point here is, people don't like teenage girls, and people don't like the things that teenage girls like, and we are inherently trained in our lives to not like teenage girls. But that being said, more on that later. When we think about Rory Gilmore, we also come across this other problem that happens in a lot of media, and I think that the best example of this media is The Vampire Diaries, which is they made the main character too perfect in the beginning. too perfect. Everyone idolizes that main character, Elena in the Vampire Diaries, Rory in Gilmore Girls. They put her on a pedestal. When you put a main character on a pedestal like that, it's actually bad later on, because you don't want your main character to be perfect. Your main character actually, in fact, cannot be perfect, because your main character is the one who has to keep making mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And if your main character is making mistakes and learning from mistakes, but we're told every episode, no matter what, that she's actually inherently the best person on the show, and perfect and beautiful and amazing and the best thing that's ever happened to anyone that's on the show, and everyone's willing to risk their lives or their careers or their pockets, wallets, whatever, money on them, and we see them make some of the biggest, stupidest mistakes of people on the show, even if other characters on that show, for example, Paris, have made that exact same mistake and made that exact same mistake again and again and again, and aggressively refuses to learn from it, like not even not learning from it, aggressively refusing to learn from it. Even if our main character makes the mistake, kind of learns from it, but doesn't learn from it that much, we're still going to prefer, unfortunately, the side character who isn't supposed to be perfect and who has never been perfect to the main character who we're told is perfect, in spite of the fact that we're supposed to like the main character more than we like any other character on the show. So that's the problem with Rory, because Rory, if we look at her, doesn't actually think she's perfect. She's just told she's perfect. She's actually very shy and doesn't know what to do and very awkward. We also don't like awkward teenage girls. I'd like to remind everyone about that right now. Okay. So she's super awkward. She defends herself when she has to, but slowly she stops realizing that she has to defend herself because so many other people in the show are either willing to defend her or abuse her and knock her down when she tries to defend herself. So she stops defending herself more and more and more until she starts making more and more mistakes. If Mitchum Huntsberger had told 16-year-old Rory Gilmore that she didn't have what it took to be a journalist, she'd go, that's one opinion, but you're a rich asshole. I don't care. But it wasn't season 1 Rory that heard that term. It was season 5 Rory. Now, Greta Gerwig in the Barbie movie. I just finished reading an article on her, well, it was on Margot Robbie in the Barbie movie from Vogue, but Greta Gerwig had this really good part where about the book Raising Ophelia from the 90s, which is like a parenting book apparently, that talks about how when young girls grow up to be teenagers, they go from like thinking that they can absolutely rule the world and do whatever they want and be perfect to thinking that they have to apologize for their very existence. And we actually watch Rory go through this. She goes from the 16-year-old who doesn't really care what other people think about her and is actively just trying to do what she needs to do so that she can reach her goals, to the person who's continuously told by every adult in her life that she's either so perfect it's beyond words, or the rich adult in her life continuously instead try to tell her that she's got to work harder, that she's not worth this thing that she has, that she has to do more or do less or be more or be less. And we're not seeing all of it, but we are getting the hints and the tips, because the headmaster from Chilton kind of goes out of his way to knock Rory down a peg, because she's like, oh yeah, well, I'm like, I have a 4.0 in my current school, I'll have a 4.0 in this school, and is she correct? Yes. But does it mean that it's actually mentally healthy for her? No. When she goes to Yale, she's definitely burnt out by that point. As we see from her not doing every extracurricular, she's just burnt out from the classes alone. Now, that being said, we also see it happen with her teachers. She's knocked down a peg when she has to drop out of one of her classes that she had been really excited about. She's knocked down a peg by her grandparents continuously without them even realizing it, because even if they tell Rory that she can do everything, they also buy her way into a lot of things that she didn't actually want to be bought into. Now, I know what you're saying. Now, that's privilege right there. She's mad at her parents or grandparents for buying her into things. She didn't ask them to do that. She didn't think that she would need it. And they kept doing things for her. And yeah, she is allowed to complain about that because it's not something that she asked for. And also, it's financial abuse, which we discuss on this in the Rory Gilmore video. Say hello to my mom in the background. And in the Rory Gilmore video, we go deeper into the concept of the financial abuse that Emily and Richard use on Lorelai consistently, especially in the term of, we will give you the money for Rory to go to Chilton, but you have to see us every Friday night without fail. If you fail this, we will make your lives a living hell, but we're gonna make your lives a living hell every Friday night anyways. Mwahahahaha. Okay? So that's what Rory grew up in, starting at the age of 16, continuing on. Did they keep telling her that she could do things? Yes, but they also kept telling Lorelai that she couldn't do things. So she's seeing her mom, who is her absolute hero, be told that she cannot do everything that she thinks that she can do because her parents are going to continuously tell her that she sucks. Continuously, forever, while telling Rory that she rocks. But Rory can feel the other shoe dropping even if she doesn't mentally understand that the other shoe could drop at any moment. So she starts becoming more of a nervous person, because when you go from 16 to 20, you're going to start becoming more of a nervous person anyways, because your frontal cortex is forming a tiny bit more. From the age of 20 to 25, you start doing a lot less stupid things even if you don't realize it, or you start to be more embarrassed by those stupid things that you have done. Trust me. Between the ages of 16 and 20, I went from doing so many stupid things to slightly less stupid things to so much less stupid stuff, while actively knowing, like while I was doing all this stupid stuff, that it was stupid and that it was a bad idea. But you can't stop yourself because you don't have a frontal cortex. All of Rory's characterization doesn't have a frontal cortex. Now, I actually really need a drink. One sec. No, I used new coffee. We're good. I'm saying this because I do understand that we want to look at Rory and we want to say, hey, yeah, this isn't a character who's perfect. This is in fact a character who should be more perfect. And if we're going to be told that this character is perfect every time, maybe she should learn from her mistakes, actually not make these mistakes, or have never made these mistakes, because we see Rory make mistake after mistake after mistake. But if Paris Geller had been the main character of the show, we wouldn't be having the same problem, because even though Paris never, ever learns from her mistakes, at least we don't think that she could possibly ever learn from her mistakes, because she's Paris. She's just Paris, okay? Now, that being said, I'm not saying that Rory doesn't deserve the trouble that she gets sometimes. What has Rory done? People like to point out everything that she has ever done wrong, so then I therefore just forget it in my head. She should not have dated Dean while he was with Lindsay, obviously, but Dean was in fact the one who was married, and yeah, Rory knew that she was breaking up a marriage, but we should really blame the husband more than we blame the mistress. I know that it seems like an unpopular opinion, especially if the mistress knows that the husband is married, but I'm not saying that Rory shouldn't have done it. I'm not saying that Rory shouldn't have done it. She obviously shouldn't have banged Dean. She obviously shouldn't have lost her virginity to a married man. But Dean was going to continuously go after Rory forever, even if he was married 5 more times. He just was, because Dean thinks that he deserves Rory. He thinks that he deserves Rory for some reason. And Dean is a very abusive personality, but when you have an abusive personality in your life, the other thing that they have is a gentleness beyond compare. And that gentleness beyond compare is used to hook you, here, this is a hook, to hook you and snag you in and tell you that everything is possibly wrong with their lives, could be blamed on this one person, and you should come and fix them because really they need the help. And I watched this firsthand for the past couple of years, so I'm kind of an expert on the situation, but it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it okay. It does make it it's a hook. It's a hook, and Rory went in line and sinker, and that was stupid of her. And we don't forgive her for that, obviously. But I would like to see more people blaming Dean than they blame Rory, first and foremost. Now, when it comes to other things about Rory, I don't know, man. I'm so used to defending Rory that I'm not used to having to talk shit about her, but she does need to have shit talked about her. Did she probably need to hear from someone in her life that maybe she wasn't super awesome, great at journalism? Yes, but it shouldn't have been Mitchum Huntsberger, who'd actually never seen her journalize. He saw her be his assistant for 6 months. It should have been Doyle. Doyle could have been like, hey, you're really good at this specific thing, that specific thing being editing, but you're not great at journalism. It could have been anyone besides Rory, because the thing that Rory was going to be great at was always editing, which is why she was the editor-in-chief of the Yale School newspaper, because she was good at it. She was good at getting everyone else to do the job of journalism. And if we could have seen that side of things in a year in the life, we would have gotten such a great view of Rory finding her passion and figuring out her passion, because she was never actually passionate about the journalist thing. She was passionate about the editing thing, continuously, forever. That's just how it went. Now, we were never actually going to see that, because Amy Sherman probably didn't doesn't actually like to see her female character succeed for longer than 30 seconds at a time. We were never going to see it. But my point in all of this is just that I'm so sick of seeing people villainize Rory that I'm so ride or die for Rory that I forget half the crap she's done. And it's not because she hasn't done a lot of crap. When I watch the episodes, I'm like, oh my God, why are you doing this? But I'm also like, oh, I would have done that at 16. 17, yeah, that's me. Ooh, yeah, 18-year-old Jack definitely would have done something really similar to that. 18-year-old Jack did do something really similar to that. 19-year-old Jack was stupider than Rory. 20-year-old Jack wouldn't have stolen a boat. Would like to make that clear. Wouldn't have stolen a boat. But 20-year-old Jack wasn't just realizing that she was super rich. 20-year-old Jack was realizing something different, which is that she was poor. Which is a completely different playing field. Rory was realizing that she was super rich, and she was seeing all these guys her age who grew up in the same class that she's now realizing that she was a part of. And I'd like to remind everyone right here, right now, that Rory did not grow up super rich. Rory did not grow up with money. She grew up impoverished by a mother who was a maid at a hotel. They did not have an actual home to live in. So the mother asked to live in the shed on the hotel. Rory was the baby Jesus, okay? Rory was a baby Jesus living in the shed on a hotel property while her mom was a maid. And Rory Gilmore chased a clown around when the clown scared Rory, and Rory dropped her cotton candy or her popcorn or her ice cream, something along those lines, because they couldn't afford to get a second and forced the clown to get it for them, because the clown made Rory drop the thing that she got as a special treat, go into the circus, because that was the outing that they had for that time period, because they were not wealthy enough to be able to afford this, because Lorelai ran away from her financially abusive parents, and by running away from her financially abusive parents, she no longer had money, because if you were raised by financially abusive people, they're not going to let you have the trust fund because they're financially abusive and manipulative, and those people will use their money. Again, here's the hook, and they hook you in, and they go, here's the money, which is exactly what we see happen in season 1, episode 1 of Gilmore Girls, and every time after. When Rory is graduating from Yale with no student debt, which we're all very jealous of, I know, Emily is continuously trying to get Lorelai to have a new reason to need to borrow money from her parents, because they know they need to have that hook, or they assume they need to have that hook in Lorelai to be able to keep Lorelai coming, because they, say it with me, financially and emotionally abuse and manipulate her. Yes, thank you for saying it with me. And that happens with Rory too. Okay, it does. And then Rory is raised up until the age of 16 as a poor girl, knowing she does not have money, knowing she is not wealthy, knowing her grandparents are wealthy, but not really knowing who they are, because knowing that her mother does not have a good relationship with her grandparents. So then, at the age of 16, Rory is starting to see that her grandparents can give her these things if they decide that she is worthy of them. And they do give her these things that they decide that she is worthy of. And when she graduates from Chilton, she gets a car, and that's a very special present. And her grandmother plans on a trust fund for her, but only if Rory follows her great-grandmother plans this trust fund, but only if Rory follows every single rule that the people in the family have. Only then. And it's something that people like to miss, because people don't like to look at wealthy characters and see people who can still not have everything because they have the money that we as real life human beings don't have. So how could they suffer as these characters who have everything? They have the wealth. But Rory, again, up until the age of 16, didn't have the wealth. Even at 17 and 18 and 19, she didn't have the wealth. She kind of had access to the wealth. She could have asked for the wealth, but she didn't have the wealth for real, because her grandparents were rich. Her mother was not rich. She was not rich. She was watching her mother financially struggle. She herself was financially struggling and working while being a student. And did she have to worry about the student loans? No, but she had to worry about paying her phone bill continuously. And that's another thing that really bothers me about season 5 Rory. One episode, she's really worrying about her phone bill and how she's going to pay it. In the next episode, she's giving Marty $75 for food with Logan. And it's this cross line where Amy Sherman Palladino can't decide if Rory is rich or not, because I don't know. But this all being said, this all being looked at, we as an audience have to understand more that there are different rules for this character than there are for A, real life people, and B, that Rory didn't realize immediately that she was wealthy and didn't think that she had the same perks as these wealthy people, because she didn't have the same perks. Yeah, she had some of the perks of being an heiress and being around these heirs, and she had the pedigree, she had the name that got her into the door with these people, but she didn't know how to use it because she had never been able to use it, because even though she was a Gilmore, and even though sometimes she goes, but I'm a Gilmore, aren't they supposed to like me because I'm a Gilmore? Doesn't mean that she understood how, anything of that world, how to use any of her grandparents' money. She still would have had to go to them to go, hey, can I have a credit card? We don't know that she has a credit card. We don't know any of that. She is still actually actively trying to work at Yale to make money. From what we see, 5% of the time it's Rachel Green having a child and Friends. That child is mentioned once every 4 episodes, okay? But it still technically exists. It is still technically there. And that's the thing that people like to miss when they see Rory making all of these mistakes, because they're like, well, she's rich. Well, she's not. She has the name of wealth. She has the wealthy grandparents. She can get the allowance if she, I don't remember how I was using these hands anymore. She can get the allowance if she needs to get the allowance, but she has to go and she has to ask for the allowance and she has to ask for the help. It's not Logan Huntsberger having 6 different credit cards in his name and a trust fund and 4 cars and a driver that he can call on at any time to just come get him like that. It's not that. It will never be that. Not even because the Gilmores don't have Huntsberger money, but because the Gilmores use their money to financially manipulate their child so they can keep those children on the hook. The hook is always there for the Gilmores in the way that that hook is not there for Logan as the first son. And people are much more willing to forgive Logan for his actions than they are to forgive Rory for her actions, because we don't what was it that we discussed at the beginning of the video? Right, teenage girls. We hate teenage girls. We think teenage girls are scum, the evil of the earth, the worst thing that could ever happen. And we don't like teenage girls that are shown to us as being perfect and then end up not being perfect, because in spite of the fact that no character in the show Gilmore Girls is perfect, people are much more willing to accept that the characters who have always been shown as not being perfect can do one good thing than being shown that the characters who have done all the right things in the past but are now trying to test the waters and have rebellious phases, but they don't know how to have rebellious phases, so they're rebelling against themselves 90% of the time. We don't like seeing them fail. We don't like seeing them mess up. We don't like seeing any of that. And it's not because they're inherently bad. It's not because they're the villain of the show. It is because we don't like that little teenage girl continuously, forever. So we don't like Rory even at the age of 20, because we first saw her at the age of 16 being considered a perfect 16-year-old, and then we see her mess up as a 20-year-old and we're just like, oh, fuck that bitch. And it bothers me. So I'm a Rory defender for life because I don't like that. But again, I don't like a lot of the characterizations that they use for Rory either. I don't think, honestly, that Rory would have ever cheated on any of these characters. I don't think that she would have had an affair with Logan in A Year in the Life. I don't think she would have had an affair with Dean. I think that Amy Sherman-Palladino really just likes to throw darts at a wall and choose what the next path for these characters is going to be. But all that being said, even with those things happening, I don't think that Rory is the villain of the show, and I will never think that Rory is the villain of the show. And you can try really hard to tell me all the terrible things that she's done. I know the terrible things that she's done. I've watched the show too, and I understand why we have to look at these things, because I discuss all the terrible things that characters have done, and I'm sure that the next episode of Gilmore Girls I watch, I will just go, oh my god, oh, we need to discuss Rory a bit more in this episode, because oof. But the point of this video right here, this one that we're watching right now, is to discuss the teenage girlhood of Rory Gilmore and why we don't like her because of that. Because I am so sick of seeing people hate the teenage girl character. It's exhausting. Isn't it exhausting? It feels exhausting. I am exhausted. I've been talking for 24 minutes and 22 seconds. But it doesn't mean that I'm not exhausted. It might be less than 24 minutes, 22 seconds when I finish cutting this up, I would like to say, because there were 3 seconds of silence while I was trying to get the chocolate syrup out of the bottle, and I usually cut that off. But yeah. So, that's it. Bye! Also, hi, one more thing that I forgot to mention. I do not care why you don't like Rory Gilmore. Like, aggressively, if you try to tell me a list of reasons why you don't like Rory, or why you think she deserves consequences, or why she is evil, or why she is the villain of the show, chances are I will block you, or just delete the comment, especially if you go into multiple paragraphs about it, because that's what happened on my Rory Gilmore video, and I'm getting sick of it, guys. Emotionally, for my mental health, for my well-being and my mental health, I will probably either block you or delete the comments. So please don't. Just asking, please.